Welcome to JC Sports Detroit Lions News Podcast on JC Sports YouTube page. I'm your host, Tochap. We're going to react to the Detroit Lions Jacksonville Jaguars game where the Detroit Lions absolutely dominated the Jacksonville Jaguars 52-6. They covered the 13.5 spread, which was 14 by game time, which was the highest in the NFL. They also covered the over-under by themselves. So they won 52-6. They beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 52-6 in convincing fashion. 643 yards to 170 yards. Detroit didn't allow 200 yards total. Yards per play, Jacksonville had 3.6. Detroit had 8.9. Detroit had 449 passing yards to the 129 of the Jacksonville Jaguars. They had more rushing yards than Jacksonville had total yards, which is insane to me. 37-10 in first downs, and it was just a rout. And if you look at some of the things like Jared Goff, his stats, this was phenomenal. He just was dealing as a his pass chart looks great, but even the stats look great. 24 for 29, 412 yards passing, 4 TDs, 0 interceptions, a perfect 158.3 rating. And when you think about how special this victory was for the Detroit Lions, you have to look at this. It's the first time since 1934 they're 9-1. It's the first time since they have an 8-game winning streak since 1934. It's 9-1, 1934 too. 30th win over the last 3 seasons. And when you think about Detroit and the way that they've been playing, it's not no shock they're winning like this. It's no shock. They are the most talented team when they step on the field, and they show it. And Kirby Joseph said something interesting to the press. He says, if you don't come ready, we're going to beat that ass. And that's just the way they operate. You know, if Detroit's going to come in there, if you're going to come into Detroit and you're going to play a half-ass game, you're not going to survive much longer. You're going to get your ass kicked. Like, you just will. And that's the way the Detroit Lions play. Like, they don't settle for, they don't have these games where they take it for granted. They don't have those games. Today's a perfect opportunity. If they could have took this game for granted, but what did they do? They dominated the Jacksonville Jaguars 52-6. Even after Jared Goff's horrible day against Houston Texans, he has 4 TDs, 0 interceptions. And if you look at like the rushing yards, Dave Montgomery had 15 carries for 75 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs 69 yards and 1 touchdown. You got to think about this. There's no team playing better than the Detroit Lions right now. There's no one that's playing better than the Detroit Lions right now. A lot of people say the Philadelphia Eagles are comparative to the Detroit Lions. It's not true. The Detroit Lions are handling teams at a frequent pace. It's not just a one-off. It's been 3 games. They beat the Dallas Cowboys convincingly. They beat the Tennessee Titans convincingly. They beat the Jacksonville Jaguars convincingly. They are just beating teams. And even when they do not play their best game, like they did against Houston, where they threw 5 interceptions and they still win, that tells you everything about the team that they are. They're not easy to beat. As an observer of the NFL, they're definitely a team that you just don't want to look at because they will beat you. And this Dan Campbell guy, who everyone in Detroit loves, he has shown the ability to get these guys up for every effing game. And when you think about a dangerous team, it's easy to get yourself up for a game against the Green Bay Packers or the Kansas City Chiefs or the Dallas Cowboys or whatever. It's another thing to get yourself up for the Tennessee Titans, the Jacksonville Jaguars. These are hard games because the Jacksonville Jaguars and Tennessee Titans are 2 of the worst teams in the NFL. Even the person who, like, if you said, let's take game by game by game, you would look at this game and you would go, this should be an automatic win. Like we said on the podcast Thursday, Lions were favored by 14 points. That was the highest point spread in the NFL this season. When you think about the highest point spread total, there's been a lot of teams that played some really crappy teams, some really good teams playing some really crappy teams, and 14 is the highest point spread total. Vegas tells you everything you need to know about this Detroit Lions team. Not only are they a good team, but they will absolutely mollywop you if they are given a chance. And every time you give them a chance to explode on what they're doing, they will. It's been proven over and over again. And you look at this stat right here. Every quarterback that they played has had under 1.5 passing touchdowns. So if you would have took this all, it's around plus It's Brown plus 2,700. 27,000 if you would have took this all under, which is insane to think, because if you would have put a $10 bet on it, it would have won you a ton of money. Basically, if I went back and it's like plus 27,000, but I'd have to add it up more better. But they're just beating teams. They're playing hard, and they're one of the tougher teams in the NFL. And there's no doubt about it. And when you think about the Detroit Lions and what they're able to do, there's no doubt. There's no doubt that they are just beating teams physically and mentally. And these teams that are coming to play Detroit, they're struggling. Especially the Titans that came in here, they struggled. The Jacksonville Jaguars, one of the worst defeats in their franchise history. It's another level to come to Detroit. It just is. So Detroit's objective from here on out is to potentially get the home field advantage, potentially, obviously get that first round bye. They've had some injuries, but they're still rolling. Like, you wouldn't think with all the injuries that they've sustained, like Hutchinson, like Davenport, like Anzalone today, like Derek Barnes, they just keep going. And it's interesting because you say, when is enough enough? Well, we don't know when enough is enough because Dan Campbell doesn't allow that to happen. So this Detroit Lions team, they are heading in they're wild right now. And it's just a lot of fun to watch, especially with the next 3 games that they got coming up. They got the Colts and they got the Bears on Thanksgiving. It's 3 games at 11 days, and we'll see how this all works out. But obviously today was a win, and obviously next week they go to play the Colts. They come home and play the Bears on Thanksgiving. It will be an absolute riot if the Detroit Lions can win all 3 games. Going into that 3-game stretch, that'll be a pretty tough stretch starting with the Packers on December 5th. So we will see you in the next Detroit Lions News podcast video on JC Sports YouTube page. Please stay tuned for more Detroit sports on JC Sports, and we will talk to you in the next video.